Lost media. Lost media has got to be one of the most fascinating things to me in the world. Now, if you're not sure what lost media is, it's pretty much exactly what it sounds like. Any sort of media that is not available to the public, or maybe it's literally lost, no one can find it. You're probably wondering, in the age of streaming technology, how can media be lost? Well, in the case of this list, you'll find out some ways. It could be stolen, it could be lost to time. The age of technology that we're in now, so everything is constantly being saved and archived and all that jazz. But there was a time where that just wasn't the case, like at all, leaving many various pieces of media, whether it be movies, audio clips, television broadcasts, so many things have been lost to time. Some things we may never see. So with all that being said, today we're going to be talking about 5 pieces of lost media that I would love to see. Now, if you're part of the lost media community, some of these might sound a little familiar to you. I'm going to try to go for ones that aren't like supremely like top of the iceberg well known. But that being said, if you are a fan of lost media, you're probably going to know a lot of these. And if you're not, well then some of these might come as a huge surprise to you, I'm hoping. So starting out, number 5 is the original version of the 2012 animated film Food Fight. Now, if you've never heard of Food Fight, basically it's this really shitty animated movie that came out in 2012. I watched it a couple years ago, and it was pretty bad. It's got some charm to how bad it is, but like towards the end I was just like, this is one of the worst things I've ever fucking seen in my life. But there's actually a reason as to why this movie was as bad as it was, and that is because the original version was not the one that we all got to see. This movie, like I said, came out in 2012, but it was originally slated to come out in 2003. The early version of the film was going to be a lot different from what I hear. What went down was that the hard drives containing the film were stolen. Like, who? Really? You stole a hard drives for Food Fight? Like, why? So they were never able to find these hard drives, and therefore they had to start completely from scratch. The budget for this film was around $65 million. Apparently a lot of that budget was already spent on licensing products, mascots, actors, production. They spent a lot of money on that movie, only to have it stolen by some troublemaker, who knows. So they had to start completely from scratch. I mean, can you imagine that? Like putting your heart and soul, or maybe none of that, and just putting a ton of money into a film only to have it stolen, and then you gotta completely start over. That would definitely hinder my spirits. So they was stuck in limbo for about a decade, and then finally came out around 2012 to essentially a universal panning. Everybody hated it. If you've never seen it, I would say go check it out, at your own risk. It's a pretty bad movie, but thinking about what it could have been, thinking about maybe how it could have been better, is intriguing to me. And it's a shame that a lot of people's hard work had to be, put to an end because one person decided, I want to steal this movie. That original footage is probably out there somewhere, or maybe it's completely destroyed. All I know is that the original version of Food Fight is lost, and I'd kind of like to check it out. Number 4 is Wildlife. This is a canceled Disney animated film that would have come out around 1999 or 2000. This was around the time that DreamWorks was starting to step up their game after Katzenberg had left Disney to form DreamWorks, and now they were sort of developing this rivalry. So the directors of Wildlife wanted to create a film that would, and I quote, knock the socks off the competition. They wanted it to have a mature edge, and they actually filled it with a really adult-oriented jokes, like none that you would expect out of Disney at the time. So of course that led to a lot of skepticism within Disney. This was so different from the work they had done up to that point. I think 99, they had just come out of like Tarzan. They had just come off of the Disney Renaissance. This was going to be a huge turn in a direction that they have never gone in before. So of course they were afraid of what would happen, and sure enough, Roy Disney, who was the vice chairman of the board at Disney, approving all the films, was apparently appalled by the mature humor of the film. And I think there's actually one joke where alright, fuck it, I'm gonna read it. So, 2 gay characters are about to enter the sewers, and one remarked, "Have you ever been down a manhole before?" Yeah, that, in a Disney film. So sure enough, the film was completely shut down. I believe they had been in development already, so there's potentially a lot of stuff out there that was completed in the film that has not seen the light of day. I think there's some like concept art, but overall there's still, I imagine all the storyboards are done. And you can't deny, this is still a really intriguing premise for a Disney movie. I mean, if they didn't make it then, I cannot see any possibility of them making it now. But to have this like animation with like, I don't know what they had planned, hookers or whatever, you cannot deny that you'd still at least wanna look and see what it's in store for. This movie could have been awful for all we know. Probably would have. But you know what? Never came to be. Therefore, we'll never know. Therefore, interest can only go up. Number 3 is the uncensored version of Sailor Mouth. This is an episode of SpongeBob. For all you diehard SpongeBob fans out there, you should know that though. It aired in 2001. And if you don't know the premise of this episode, basically SpongeBob and Patrick learn how to swear, and this causes trouble. So in the episode, all the swears are censored by like a dolphin noise. There are some other ones that are censored by other just noises. But during the recording of the episode, allegedly, the actors were told to improvise a swear word, and then the censored dolphin noise would be then placed over that word. They were just told to improvise something, come up with something on the fly, but the actors apparently had a hard time doing it, so they just decided to use actual swear words. So there'll be moments in the episode where SpongeBob will walk in and he's like, "How the dolphin noise are ya?" And according to that story in the recording, the actor playing SpongeBob, Tom Kennedy, literally said, "How the fuck are ya?" So that means there's probably an entire version of this episode out there where all the swears are intact. SpongeBob and Patrick just swearing. Is their voice actors. Like, are you kidding? I would love to see, I mean, you have that audio clip of Tom Kenny, like, swearing as SpongeBob. But this is like one of my favorite episodes of SpongeBob. It was a time where cartoons weren't afraid to, you know, take risks, cross lines a little bit. Cartoons nowadays are just way too safe, way too, like, they talk down to their audience, you know? And that's why I love that episode. It's great. It's funny as fuck. Oh, sorry. It's funny as If I could just get my hands on the original version where SpongeBob and Patrick are saying fuck and like, and then there's that moment at the end where Mr. Krabs just lets loose with all these different words. Dude, how funny would that have been? Alright, I'm gonna stop using the dolphin noise swearing thing. Unfortunately though, these recordings are probably buried deep within the archives of Nickelodeon, meaning that we'll probably never see them. If we can organize a raid on Area 51, I'm sure we can organize a raid on Nickelodeon to find that lost audio clip. Don't actually do that, please. I don't want to be responsible for that. Please don't do that. But who knows, maybe one day someone will leak it and then we'll see it, but for now, I don't imagine we'll be seeing this one anytime soon. Number 2 on this list is Kingdom of the Sun. This is yet another canceled Disney movie, but unlike Wildlife, which was just an original concept, Kingdom of the Sun was canceled and then reworked into another film, a little movie you may or may not have heard of called The Emperor's New Groove. So as you all know, Emperor's New Groove is this funny, comedic story, very lighthearted, but Kingdom of the Sun, on the other hand, was going to be this epic musical along the lines of like Lion King and Little Mermaid. A lot of the characters that were part of Emperor's New Groove were part of this. Several of them are different. For example, Pacha, he's sort of like the dad, a bit of a wiser father figure to Cusco. He wasn't even called Cusco in Kingdom of the Sun, he was called Manco. And basically in the original storyline was that Pacha and Cusco look alike, Manco, and they switch places, and then they just have their adventure. I think the biggest offense about Kingdom of the Sun, though, is the fact that my boy, Kronk, wasn't even a part of it. I think he was, in the original version, he was like this like tiki sort of thing, really small. That is the one change. I'm like, yeah, good on that. Kronk is like the guy. Now, honestly, I would much rather have an epic, dramatic story as opposed to a comedic story. That doesn't mean I don't like a comedic story, but to hear a version of The Emperor's New Groove that was actually really dramatic and powerful, and it was a musical as well, that's really fascinating to me. Like, what the hell could that have been like? But the story wasn't working, and the grand old folks at Disney were like, this isn't working, you need to change all this stuff, essentially you need to rework the entire movie. So from there, The Emperor's New Groove was born. A lot of the people, Sting of the Police was actually asked to make the entire soundtrack, almost like how Phil Collins did with Tarzan and Brother Bear, and in the end they had only kept like one of his songs in the movie. There's this great documentary directed by Sting's wife, and it's called The Sweatbox. I believe the whole thing's on YouTube. Basically, it shows the progression of what starts as Kingdom of the Sun and what ends as The Emperor's New Groove. So you could see what exactly went down, what caused the film to change so drastically, Really good stuff, really revealing. You'll see some of the unfinished storyboards in that, some of the reels, so a little bit of footage from this movie exists, but I believe about 30-something%, don't quote me on that, 30% of the movie was completed, colored, pretty much ready to go, and then Disney said, no, rework this. But yeah, I didn't even know about this until Emperor's New Groove was like, I didn't really watch it in my childhood, but I always knew it existed. And to then hear there was going to be this other version. I guarantee you, had that come out, had Kingdom of the Sun come out the way it was, that would have been the film that ended the Disney Renaissance, and not Tarzan. With all said and done, we got an iconic movie in the form of The Emperor's New Groove, but I would still love to see what Kingdom of the Sun could have been. Maybe it could have been better for all we know. I guess we'll never know. And finally, this is probably, like, when I made this list, I didn't imagine it being like a top 5 list. It's just 5 pieces. It's not that I want to see any of these more than the other ones. If this was a top 5 list, I would say this would be my number 1. I would really, really love to see this. Number 1 is The Sad Story of Henry, the 1953 broadcast. Now, if you're a normal, functioning human being, you're probably wondering, well, what the fuck is that? Well, that actually was the very first attempt at putting Thomas the Tank Engine to screen. Now, I have to confess to all of you, Thomas the Tank Engine was a vital part of my childhood. I fucking adored Thomas the Tank Engine. I collected all the wooden toys. I watched all the episodes. It was fucking... I don't even know if I'd be who I am without Thomas. Well, maybe that's a bit of a stretch. But that being said, Thomas the Tank Engine was so important in my childhood. I even look back at it, and I even go back and watch some of those older episodes. Like, man, life was good. Now, if you don't know, Thomas the Tank Engine was actually based on a series of books that were published in the 1940s by the Reverend Wilbert Awdry. The series that we know and love came to be in the 1980s. This Thomas show was not the first attempt at bringing Thomas to the small screen. It was actually in 1953. It was a live broadcast based on the story, The Sad Story of Henry, which actually did get an episode in the Thomas series that we all know. But this was a lot different. This was actually a live broadcast that kind of went awry. So basically what happened is that BBC had approached Reverend Awdry and was like, we want to bring your Thomas books to TV. They wanted to adapt 2 stories from the Railway series to television. So they used real models during this live broadcast, and what had happened was one of the engines, Henry, had went off the rails. During the broadcast, this was live to God knows how many people. So what had happened is that a hand reached down, put the model back on the tracks, and then the episode continued as it was. So that incident had made several news headlines. That's actually the only way people know that this actually happened. So that put the BBC in a very uncomfortable position. They still had these other stories planned. Their models were faulty. And so what did they do? They completely scrapped the other episodes they had planned. And then nothing. That was it. Thomas had laid dormant until the 1980s, in which they were like, let's give this another go. And then that was the series that went on to be successful. So this was broadcast once in 1953, and then it was never broadcast again. No one had saved it. It was 1953. Nobody was saving stuff back then. Nobody was recording stuff. You didn't have a DVR. You didn't have screen record. You didn't have any of that. So it was a one-time airing, and that was it. No one has seen it since. That and the BBC apparently having a track record of not preserving old content, it's pretty safe to say that this will never, ever, ever be seen by anyone. It could be locked up in some vault somewhere, who knows? Point is, this thing is like, even then, it was literally almost 70 years ago. This short predates my dad. It's never probably going to be seen by anyone. And that's a real shame to me because Thomas means so much to me in my childhood. And to hear that there was an original version made in the 1950s, I think that could have been really fascinating to see. I would love to see this somehow, some way. I want to see what the original Henry looked like. I want to see, how it went down. It was like, I don't even know what to say. Like, there's just no evidence to know what exactly went down other than the fact that the hand picked up the thing. There's no photos of this anywhere. It is gone. How do you not want to see this? How do you not want to see the very first version of Thomas the Tank Engine in live action? Like, almost like, imagine if they did like a Spider-Man adaptation, the very first, and then it was just gone, like, never to be seen by the human eye. Granted, we got all these other iconic versions, and yes, the Thomas show that we did get was iconic in the definitive Thomas show, but to know that this broadcast happened once and then just was erased from history. It's kind of messed up. I feel like not enough people know about this, and now hopefully you do. Who knows, maybe there was somebody who watched that broadcast that is still living to this day. If you're out there, please come forward. I would love to know more if you remember. I know it was 70 years ago, but still, if by any chance you remember this broadcast, please reach out. Come out in the comments, please. Let's just talk. Let's just talk. It's fine. I just want to talk. Alright, so that is going to do it for this video. I really enjoyed talking about all this lost media. And to keep in mind, these are just but 5 pieces of lost media. There are hundreds upon hundreds upon hundreds of pieces of lost media that are being discovered with every passing day, and some that are just continued to being searched for. It's a really fascinating concept. And if you want to learn more about lost media, go check out the Lost Media Wiki. I genuinely want to thank the Lost Media Wiki and all the people there. A bunch of the stuff you heard me say came directly from the information on the Lost Media Wiki. Go check them out. Go check out some lost media. They're great. Yeah, I'd love to talk about lost media again. You know, there's a lot of really intriguing pieces of lost media, a lot of really dark, like, fucked up pieces of lost media. So yeah, this is definitely not going to be the only time I talk about lost media. Lost media. Alright, that's going to do it for me today. Stay frosty, all you beautiful people, and have a good one.